Oh, I see something happening.
There we go.
Hey, I think we're back on again. All right, there we are. Look, our faces.
All right, I see the disclaimer. All right, cool. So we'll transition to our off-camera or from our off-camera talk about the rec share happy hour last night and the Celtics Knicks, and we'll get to the market. No one wants to hear our prediction about Celtics in 5. So, I mean, another insane, what are we, like 8 or 9 up days in a row, something ridiculous like that.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Which brings me to one of my favorite quotes, which it's possible I made it up, but I probably got it from someone else, which is trade based on what you see, not based on what you think. So, we don't have a trade deal yet, even though they keep saying, hey, we're going to get a trade deal. GDP was negative. Jobs number was a beat, but still low. And, we had negative revisions, of course. And we have recouped all of the Liberation Day losses as of today. Been saying for a while, I think that the April 7 bottom is the bottom. Thought it's possible, and it's still possible. Retest it. We'll see what Monday holds. We're doing this on a Friday, which is a little bit rare for us. I did add some hedges today, but you again trade based on what you see. One of the most interesting thing, I think, to me, and I wrote about it today in the newsletter, and I'm going to be writing about it on Monday and probably a lot more, is the Trump picking the winners trade. And so I think and this kind of went below the radar screen, but it's something we've been looking at for reasons that will become apparent maybe over the next couple of weeks. Cantor did a SPAC, symbol was CEP, and they announced a merger with a company 21 something or other, which is replicating MicroStrategy's strategy. And last I looked.
So this was like an IPO of a SPAC today?
So they announced a SPAC merger.
Got it.
With this company. And it shot up as high as 60. It had a down day today.
Nice.
But,
So it was an empty shell before, and then they merged with a private company.
It was an empty shell with just cash.
Right.
And they announced the merger. The merger hasn't completed yet. They announced the merger with these guys. I know Kathy Wood's got a company 21 something. These guys are different. They're 21 something. The new symbol is going to be XII. And they're going to follow kind of Michael Saylor's strategy. What's interesting is who used to run Cantor, Howard Lutnick. Who runs Cantor now? Howard Lutnick's kids. So you've got now these Cantor SPACs that they're issuing. Here's Seppo, which is another one that's at 12. These things come out at 10. And they just had an IPO today of CEPT that opened up, around, what did it open? It opened at 11. So it started at 10, it opened at 11. So the theme we're kind of working on right now is the Trump winner theme. So Howard Lutnick, Elon Musk, Jensen Huang, and also the asset classes, Bitcoin. What's also interesting, and Jeremy, I don't know if you were around during the SPAC boom, but SPACs now seem to be back.
I traded a few of them.
When SPACs were back before, after COVID, that was a lot of fun. Luckily, we did not shut down our SPAC ETF because I knew, we went from on February 15th, 2020, we were almost 200 million. Now we're like a little over 9. And normally I'd just shut it down, but I'm like, you know what? I think SPACs are going to come back. So I think you're seeing the return of SPACs, and I think you're seeing now this Trump winner trade. And on Monday's newsletter, I'm going to be talking about a couple other companies that are kind of following a similar strategy because I think Bitcoin falls into that. So those are my thoughts. And again, I mean, market's overbought. If you're on the sidelines, I would not be buying now. And again, I did add some hedges today. We'll see what Monday holds, and it ought to be a fun week. We got a lot of earnings next week as well. So those are my thoughts. What are you thinking there, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm taking a cautious approach to getting into a few new positions, as well as early in the week I trimmed a few on Monday there just before the drop. I did buy the dip on SMCI, but more or less I put it into limited risk with debit spreads instead of going direct into equity. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm still pretty cautious on this market, but I'm able to rotate a little bit more readily than most. I don't have a massive portfolio to move weight around. I've got smaller stuff that I'll just swing trade and day trade with. But for the most part, I'm seeing that there's a trend possibly starting here, but it's still a very cautious one. It's still something you don't want to have. You don't want to be naked in this. You want to have a little bit of a hedge at least to fall back on. That being said, though, I mean there's a good setup on the chart. Technicals are starting to look like they could pop a pretty big bullish move, but it remains to be seen. There's still another shoe to drop here, it seems. So I'm taking the cautious side.
I mean, that's a great point. The problem is, and I broke some of my cardinal rules, which I hate doing, and came back and bit me on the ass, because I mean, market's going up, but Trump could send a tweet at any moment. Anything could happen. So like gold and gold miners, I've been on for a while. And I mean, right now, GDX is a short.
Yeah.
And I came into today with a lot of gold and silver miners. Finally, I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go with my rolls. I got rid of all of my silver miners. Most of my gold miners, I went short GDX and I went short SLV. Maybe too late. I should have done it earlier, but I was afraid that Trump may tweet something, or something may happen and gold and silver ramp back up. But yeah, I mean, it is a tough market to trade here, no doubt.
Right. It seems you're in the trend a little bit. I mean, it seems from our end we're looking at some money coming out of out of hedge or out of gold and silver and into risk. But it's not like a wholehearted move yet. We're still cautious, and
I mean, it could come right back.
Right.
So I went short. I went short small, because I could imagine waking up on Monday and gold's up 3% and silver's up 4%. And yeah, the last thing I wanted was something like that.
Right. Well, I mean, it's still somewhat asymmetric risk, so it's sticking to some of your plan, but maybe circumventing a couple of your cardinal rules, which is I even did the same when I was day trading the NQ this morning, or the ES this morning. I was teaching some people, and I broke one of my rules. I traded a setup instead of a break, and I got bit for it. But I had 3 trades that worked out really great beforehand, so I didn't lose anything for the day. But it's always going to catch up to you once in a while, and you got to be able to take a little bit of stride when you do lose a little bit every now and then. No one's a perfect winner. You can't all be us.
I mean, I'm
yeah. But at the same time,
I did have my best day today.
Yeah.
I might have had my best day of the month, actually, come to think about it.
That's really good. I mean,
decent chance I had my best day of the month today.
That SMCI, and then I also went into a little bit of the Bitcoin stuff. I got into MSTR a little bit heavier than I should, so I kind of tweaked my rules a little bit too. But I'm liking that trend.
I'll give you a heads up. SMLR, we're going to talk about in the newsletter. They are very, very, very motivated to mimic what MicroStrategy is doing.
Sorry, I had a flicker there.
And then here's FLD. It's another one I'm going to talk about in the newsletter. So these are 2 that I've been in.
That's a decent setup.
All right.
So, I mean, the thing is, MicroStrategy is being valued at a certain multiple to the Bitcoin they have on their portfolio. These guys are at a lower multiple.
Right.
Which is why CEP ramped.
So
All right, let's get to our guest
Yeah.
here, who I think is a Sixers fan. So unfortunately for him,
Yeah.
he doesn't have a dog in the race. So Pat, you want to introduce Dr.
Yep.
Watts?
Yep. This is Dr. David Watts, Johns Hopkins trained plastic surgeon, right? He is the founder of a business called Crypto Custody Trust, right? It's a little offshoot from being a plastic surgeon, but he's an entrepreneur. So hopefully he's going to come on and talk about Malaysia. I think that's the exciting stuff. He's going to talk about crypto trust, some other good stuff, a little bit of Sharia investments. And then, the quid pro quo, he's got to pay us back. Hopefully you're going to give us some tips on some plastic surgery stocks. Yeah? Yeah, I got a few.
Are there any plastic surgery?
Yeah, there are.
I
got some. I've worked all day on these. All right. Anyway, David, so go ahead. Talk about Malaysia a little bit. Tell me what you're doing there.
Yeah, so we have some exciting things in the pipeline. And when I spoke to you last, Pat, it was just Malaysia, but it's now extended out to Pakistan as well. So we're a crypto custody trust, and what we are is a custody provider or a solution across the board on digital assets. So not only with cryptocurrencies, but NFTs. But the big thing that's come into play now is the tokenization of real world assets. But of that, a subset that we're actually working on, which is the tokenization of financial products, and specifically the bond sector. And everyone's familiar with traditional or conventional bonds, but what many people may not be aware of is that there's Islamic finance, which is really a parallel financial system to the conventional system, which everyone knows. And it's quite a large financial area, especially over in Southeast Asia. So Malaysia, Pakistan, Indonesia, Singapore, in that whole Southeast Asia region, and especially in these Islamic countries, and then over in the GCC, so Dubai and the UAE, Saudi Arabia, you've got Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, etc. And so when you look at their overall market, you're talking somewhere between $5 to $7 trillion counter, essentially, ecosystem or financial system. And with that, you have the conventional bonds, but in the Islamic world, you also have this set of bonds called sukuk bonds. And unlike traditional bonds, which are based on interest and debt, sukuk bonds in the Islamic financial world are based off of a underlying physical asset. So it can be a property, it can be precious metals, it can be agriculture or whatever. The key thing that separates Islamic finance from traditional finance is there can be no interest involved. And interest in Islamic finance is called riba, and that's considered haram or unlawful. Then they also do not allow gharar, which is uncertainty. So there are no derivatives, there's no futures, forwards, options, or swaps that are allowed. So everything has to be a spot trade. So you may say to yourself, wow, this is really like a boring space, not a lot happening. But these sukuk bonds and traditional bonds specifically have opened up a whole new realm in this tokenization of real world assets. And what do we mean by that? So right now, when these bonds are issued, they're issued as certificates. Okay, so, and to give you an idea, these sukuk bonds usually are about $200 million per sukuk bond. And they may be broken up into tranches of 500,000 to $1 million. So usually institutional investors are involved. But with the tokenization of these sukuk bonds, it now breaks it up into fractional ownership, and it now opens it up to the entire retail market. And when you're looking at this across the Islamic world, you're talking about 1.9 billion people, and 2/3 of all sukuk bonds are bought by non-Muslims. So it's really a flight to safety in the bond space because it's collateralized and backed by real physical assets. The other thing with this, and the thing that makes it so exciting, is that it's also all contained on the blockchain. So with our company, Crypto Custody Trust, we're actually able to structure the Sukuk bonds. We're actually able to tokenize the Sukuk bonds, and then we're actually able to store the Sukuk bonds on our Sharia compliant platform. In the whole Sukuk bonds, you have to be Sharia compliant. And what Sharia compliant means is that you follow the Islamic financial laws. And you actually have to have Sharia scholars, which are Islamic scholars, that go through, evaluate this, and make sure that you stay within their framework of the religious framework. Now, I must say for the podcast that I am not Muslim, I'm Christian, but I saw a huge window of opportunity and took Islamic financial courses really to understand the space. And I studied Islamic finance just like I studied general surgery, plastic surgery. And if you can learn those, you can learn Islamic finance. And so what's happening in Malaysia right now, they're actually working with the World Bank to actually set up and to digitalize their entire financial ecosystem. And so they're looking to tokenize their sukuks. And Malaysia is the largest producer of sukuk bonds in the world to the tune of about 650 billion a year. This is a gigantic market. And as they tokenize this, and again, we can assist on all phases, it has to be held in a Sharia compliant custody solution or custody platform, which we're the only ones in the world that have this. So right now we're working with the central bank. We're actually working with the Khazanah, which is their sovereign wealth fund, and they're looking to tokenize anywhere between 1 to 3 billion of their sukuk bonds out of the gate. And all this has to get done in 2025. Pakistan, we just got a call, Pat, since I spoke to you last week, is actually looking to do the same thing. And they're working with the World Bank to look to digitalize their financial system and their sukuk bonds as well, because the transactions via smart contracts are stored on the blockchain, and this makes it totally transparent. And where there's issues with money laundering, terrorism, et cetera, in some of these countries, this now opens it up, makes it fully transparent, not only to their customer base, but also to the regulators in the World Bank, which now sets them up to get loans from the IMF and World Bank going forward. So really this digitalization gives full transparency on chain, and it makes it clear and apparent to the customer base that everything is above board. And that kind of sums it up in a nutshell.
So in you said a lot of stuff, and my antenna is up for a lot of different reasons. And I'm going to ask you a question, and I apologize if you had already said it, but so these bonds are backed by what now again?
Physical assets, Matthew. So if you think about it, usually it's based on, if you're taking a corporate bond, it's going to be backed by really the full faith and credit of the company. So like
Right.
Apple, and then they're rated by the different rating agencies. Well, the same thing occurs over in this parallel financial universe, except it's backed by a physical asset. So it can be a property, it can be machinery in a plant, it can be a fleet of cars, it can be agricultural products, metals, whatever it is.
So there are a whole bunch of these backed by now, and again, in a corporate bond, the value add for me as the investor, I'm earning interest. I can't earn interest here. So how does the investor make money?
So they don't call it interest, so they get around it by saying a return. So if you were going to get a 5 to 7% return on a traditional bond, you'll get the same return on a sukuk bond, except they won't call it an interest payment. They'll call it a lease payment, and it's a return. So it's nomenclature, but it functions in the same way.
All right. I mean, as long as everyone's happy. do these things trade? I mean, I used to be 100 years ago in fixed income sales. Do these things trade in the US or are they all overseas right now?
So far, they're primarily overseas. And again, Malaysia is the number one trader of these Sukuk bonds. The Gulf states are number two. Um, I do not believe that the US really has a very active trading market on this. But where this closes the loop, and this is very important, Matthew, Pat, and Jeremy too, and this is why we're really excited about this. The tokenization of the real world assets. So if you wanted to tokenize your house, Matthew, or whatever it is that you want to tokenize, music or artwork or whatever it is, the problem is there's not a really strong secondary market at this point.
Right.
There are some, but not really very strong. The difference is with these bonds is that the issuer, which are investment banks, okay, because there's already a market set up for this, they close the loop. Because if you're a retail investor and you've got these tokens, you can now, at the time of maturity, go and redeem your tokens with the issuing bank. So it closes the loop and there's a secondary market at the time of maturation. The other thing is if you want to liquidate early and exit, you can now take a bond broker who can go and actually swap your tokens to another individual. They would all be whitelisted under that token offering, and now that would be recorded on the blockchain of the sale of the actual token. So you have a secondary market because the bond market already exists.
So here's where I get really interested. So decent chance I'm going to be speaking at a conference in France at the end of June.
Okay.
And the topic is going to be, and I'm looking at it right now, tokenized access, how ETFs are opening the gates to digital assets. So I'm an ETF issuer, and there's always talk about tokenization and how that can work in ETFs. Larry Fink has talked about that. We have an entirely different SEC than we've had in the past.
Agreed.
That's open to a lot of things that wouldn't have been open to in the future. So my sense is we're going to see some sort of tokenization flow into the ETF marketplace at some point. And I'm thinking of this as an entrepreneur. Can I put this into an ETF in some way, shape, or form? And
Yeah, so
obviously a
go
selfish
ahead.
question as an ETF issuer, but
Sure. Let's talk about what's out there now and then see how this can then translate into what you're saying. And the answer in my mind is 100% yes. So let's go back to Malaysia again, the king of. So it doesn't matter. We're just talking about sukuks, but they offer conventional bonds as well. So the interest, non-interest, like you said, a lot of it is semantics, the way it's played, but it's the same beast. So let's take a look at this and see. So right now, the Malaysian stock exchange, in combination with one of their rating agencies, have now gotten their digital custody license and are able to actually tokenize. And so what they're now doing is actually tokenizing stocks. So if you can tokenize equities or stocks, all your ETF is a bundle of equities or whatever you're doing. So now, and so then the question is, why would you tokenize it? The answer is twofold. One is that it further breaks it up to be able to fractionate it for ownership. It can now be stored in a custody solution, but more importantly, it's on chain and completely visible on the dashboard. So everything is completely transparent. It's on an immutable ledger, and it really opens everything up to full transparency in what you're doing. So do I think they're going to tokenize ETFs? I think tokenization is really, and not just because I'm in it and we're a custody provider for tokenized assets. but it's the way to digitalize pretty much everything. And that's why I think it will. And you already have a secondary market that exists. See, that's the key to it. You've
Right.
got to be able to close those loops.
With the Sukuk's anyway, right?
But even with the,
With
even with the
everything.
bonds,
It
with
opens it
everything.
up to almost a more global
Well,
exposure.
no. My point is, from my understanding, there's a somewhat active secondary market in the Sukuk paper because the banks in Malaysia are making a market, quote
Right.
unquote, let's say. But like, it's not like in, paintings or,
No,
tokenized.
it's
There's
got to
no
be
market for that.
financial.
There will
Right.
be, I believe, but it's not now. But there are in the Sukuks, is what my take, right?
And traditional bonds throughout this whole region, whoever is tokenizing and backing it. But see, what they're seeing is that the World Bank is actually backing this, and they've set up what's called the DEEP program. And what the DEEP program is doing is that the DEEP program is actually looking to enhance and promote this digitalization of their entire financial ecosystem. But because the ecosystem is already in place, it allows it to close the loop so that as the investor, be it retail or institutional investor, you can now have a way to liquidate and get out. Like you said, in the art world, the music world, whatever else you're trying to do for tokenization, you can't get out or it's difficult. Here, at the end or the maturity, you're guaranteed to be able to get out because the issuing bank or issuing broker is now going to redeem the tokens, almost like a mutual fund. The other thing that goes on here too is that you can liquidate early if you want to get out, and it's fixed returns and it's safe because it's collateralized. So go back to what Matthew was talking about with the tariffs and what's going on and who Trump chooses or doesn't. When you look over here in the Southeast Asia and GCC region, everything is looking at, okay, how's the volatility going to affect this? How is the world seen with the tariffs going to affect, et cetera? The reason why these sukuk bonds are so in demand now is because of the fact that they're based on an underlying asset that tends to be more stable. It's very similar to gold, and gold can be one of the underlying assets. So you've got something that's real and tangible that while you're having all this volatility, it stays more stable as time goes on. So this is why, like I said, you've got a closed loop with stability, and these sukuk bonds are in very, very high demand because of the fact that you've got a physical asset and it's not based on the company, which can be very affected by the volatility of the market and what's going on now from a geopolitical perspective.
So I was doing like some research on this, and one thing that I did come across that kind of talks to this is Sukuk are sensitive to real asset valuations, not interest rates, right?
Correct.
So I think it's a little bit the structure of I don't know if it's hedge. I mean, we talk about hedging, and it's not a classic hedge, it says, but there are some hedge. It is a quasi hedge.
It is. It is. It is. And it's
I
really a
mean,
flight to safety.
I wouldn't say I mean, it sounds more that it's just different. I mean, if you've got a portfolio of bonds, traditional bonds, then you've got duration risk. And, people are now, for example, Treasuries got crushed today because the jobs number was better than expected. And, the chances of the Fed lowering rates went down. And, so you've got that risk as a bondholder. So pretty much across the board, if you're a bondholder, you lost money today because interest rates went up.
But
in these bonds, it's different. I mean, you're not hedged, but now you've got access. Your bonds are backed by other things. They're not.
But let's say they're backed by art, right? And there's inflation. I mean, this is what it's just saying here. They hedge against inflation more effectively because the asset that's backing it in an inflationary environment could increase in value. That's all.
Right. It would depend on the asset, but you could create theoretically an extremely diversified bond portfolio where your entire bond portfolio is not impacted by interest rates.
Okay.
Maybe part is impacted by gold, part is impacted by oil, part is impacted by agriculture. So it could take bond investing from something that is extremely boring, and I think owning bonds just to own bonds is stupid, to actually making some sense.
And Matthew, when you look at this, you can have blended sukuk. So right now we've just been talking about the straight traditional sukuk, but the sukuk can be blended. So you can have a combination of gold, real estate, or whatever else you want to put in there. And one of the big ones that's coming down the pike is now the tokenization of energy sukuks coming out of the Gulf region with oil and natural gas. This now gets made into a bond that's now tokenized, because normally this is for huge institutional players, but breaking this up into the fractionalization and the tokens now opens it up to the retail market. So the way this plays out is that you have these investment banks that have their customer base, but they really didn't have access on the retail level to these massive bonds that are, 100, $200 million. But now, because they can be fractionated and they can sell each token for as little as $500 to $1,000, this now opens it up to the retail, which now expands the scope of the users who can get in this game. So it really, they're really expanding their offerings and really opening it up to a whole new class of potential investors that they never would have seen before.
I mean, if that works, that's cool. I mean, one of the things that, and there are a lot of things that bother me about our financial system, but one of the things is the best investments out there are reserved for people who are rich. And if you're not, you don't have access to the best stuff. And one of the things that really fascinates me about tokenization is it's got the ability to change that and level the playing field, where now, I mean, someone like Pat, who's dirt poor, could have access to the same stuff that I've got access to.
I don't know.
There we go. Wait. You kind of ruined my moment. I had a moment you just ruined it for me. Like, I'm embarrassed now. But what do you think about Bitcoin, Ether, gold, and silver into like a sukuk?
I definitely think, now the thing of it is,
Matt, you get it?
I do. BEG's one of my favorite ETFs.
Oh, just go ahead, David. Go ahead.
This is actually interesting. This could definitely work as a blended sukuk. And the thing that you have to look at is, when you're looking at the cryptocurrency space, is which cryptocurrencies can actually be contained in, like you said, a sukuk ETF. Now, when you look at this, there's only, out of the 2,000 to 3,000 cryptocurrencies, there's only 14 that can be actually traded in Islam. So the way it works is,
why is that?
Because of the fact that they can have no speculation, they can't be involved in any type of gambling, they cannot be involved in any type of speculative trading if they're not out there long enough, or they're not backed by any underlying.
All right, so if I'm Muslim, I can't buy Trump coin.
Correct. Well, you could, if so, they do. So,
well, I mean,
it insulates
if you're going to
it.
stay Sharia compliant, you shouldn't. If, however, and a lot of them don't care, then you can do whatever you want to do. But the way it works is, out of the 14, and just to give you some ideas, so Bitcoin, even though it's not backed by anything, because it's been out there long enough and it's considered universal, it would be considered halal, which means lawful. Okay. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, all the big one, or the tier ones, are fine. Now, as you get more into these esoteric meme, like Pepe coin would not be. This is not backed by anything, and it's only been out a short period of time. So what you're talking about, Pat, where you would make this combination of a sukuk, this could work. And if you've got the underlyings, this could now put this out on the market. And I'm telling you, this thing would be subscribed in a nanosecond because of the fact that there's a huge demand in this tokenized sukuk space around the world because you've got a way to exit and it opens it up to
I
the retail.
agree, man. I think it's a great idea, honestly. So, all right, let me ask you another. Oh, Jeremy, go ahead. You haven't had any chance. I know you've been wanting to say some stuff. Go for it.
There's one thing that's kind of coming to my mind, and it's something a friend of mine and I were talking about a few weeks ago. Is that we've noticed, there's some companies out there that are literally buying houses and just kind of stacking on investment side and buying more houses. And you mentioned that, I mean, you can tokenize a house in that area. That makes it so eventually, and we were talking about this before, you'd be able to trade houses on your Robinhood app. I mean, or at least portions of equity in a house, and that's kind of where this is looking. Now, would that also be something that could be run through a custody bond like this?
Yeah, so see, this is a smart play, Jeremy, to try to go right now and take the houses that you just have off of the front and trying to tokenize those. And then again, as we talked about, you've got no secondary market. So how are you going to, get any kind of liquidity?
Right.
However, if you took those assets, which are your houses, and now you form them into a sukuk, which is now the underlying are those stacked houses. Now you've got something because you can tokenize it. You can have it issued by either a bond broker or a investment bank. And now you've got a whole world that's out there that is looking at the return that you're going to get. And you've got either two ways it can come from rent if it's some kind of rent property, or number two, if you sell some of it at the end to generate the return of capital plus whatever percent you're going to give as a return, you're good to go on that. And that's why you can now, and see, this is the methodology behind what we're talking about. You can take exactly what you wanted to do for the tokenization piece, put this into a sukuk bond, and now have a ready-made market that's out there just waiting for these kind of things.
That's
so
killer.
That's the beauty behind this sukuk market that exists. And all you've got to do is just make sure that it's not against their principles. But to do that, if you're just doing straight up like real estate, gold, the Bitcoin that's considered halal, you can use anything and you can make a blended sukuk. And the beauty behind our company at Crypto Custody Trust, we actually have a PhD who's in mathematics and finance that actually structures sukuk bonds. So all you got to do is bring the underlying, show proof of the underlying in deeds or whatever it is, and then she can take that, structure for you. We can tokenize it for you with our Solana platform, and then take this thing, get it issued, because we even have the back end bond broker out of Malaysia because we're licensed in Malaysia, and then go ahead and get this out there for you. And now you've got your returns that you're, well, not the returns, but the investment that you're looking to get. And there's such a high demand for it. Even before you launch it, once you have the offer sheet, you can take this to the investment banks and you can have it oversubscribed before you even put it out on the market.
Yeah,
Because this is just one more thing, Pat, I want to add, because this is important. What happens is that the Malaysian investment banks will buy tranches of these sukuks, but they just don't keep it here in Malaysia. They then go around to Indonesia, Singapore, the GCC, the Gulf states, and now they sell it to investment banks over there, and now it can be opened up to their retail market. So see, you get what worldwide distribution with it originating from Malaysia, who knows how to do this, and then propagates it throughout the Islamic world and also over in Eastern Europe. The Russians buy this like crazy, the Ukrainians, all that whole Eastern bloc love sukuks, and the new ones that are buying sukuks like it's going out of style is China.
Right.
That's
so
killer.
what I've read is that there's a shortage of Sharia compliant financial products, and that's I think that's the story, and that's why I thought
there's two stories.
Okay.
So what you said is one, but this is bigger than that, because the other story is tokenization. So, Jeremy's talking about the housing market. Look at our housing market right now. Jeremy wants to sell his house. He hires a realtor. He or she charges a 5% commission, puts it on the MLS. I mean, that system was designed, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. I mean,
At
it's
least.
the same system.
Yeah, it's antiquated.
It's tired.
And financial markets, which I'm involved in. So I launch ETFs. You in the US can trade them, but you can trade them from, effectively from 9:30 to 4. Yeah, there's some after hours. If you're in Korea, you can buy my ETFs. If you're in Japan, I got to tweak the prospectus a little bit, and then you can buy it. I think there's some other Asian countries, maybe Vietnam, maybe Hong Kong. But if you're in Europe, you can't buy my ETFs. You've got to have a specially designed. So what I'm saying is the whole financial system is antiquated. Why can't everything be tokenized, all be on a blockchain, and I can be sitting in Croatia, the UK, New York, Seoul, Malaysia, wherever, and buy whatever the heck I want to buy I can put in $1, I could put in $1 million, whatever. At some point, we're going to see, and I believe that point will be in my lifetime, and I'm old. I mean, Pat, I guess you're older than me.
Dude, I'm almost 60, boys.
Wow.
This year.
I mean, I'm almost 62, but
This
yeah,
year.
I think we've got to have a significant overhaul of our system, and tokenization and blockchain is probably where everything is going. So
Totally
that's
agree.
the bigger picture, something we probably ought to hit on a different podcast.
Oh, dude, I've tried to get these
Yeah.
guys
And I'm
from
going
Chainlink
to
on
need it
here.
because I need stuff to talk about if I'm going to do this thing
I
in
know.
France.
That's a
Chainlink,
wide
guys,
vision.
don't stop ignoring me. All right, so Matt, can you pull up that link I sent you? And I just want to, David, all right, just
Can you put in the chat?
oh yeah. Hold on, it's cryptocustodytrust.com.
.com. Yeah.
This won't blow you up. We had a problem one time, but this
You
is
better
good.
not.
All right, so no, okay, so I'm just gonna kind of switch gears, right? So we're talking all this high tech, cool stuff, Malaysia,
it didn't blow
Sukuk,
me
blah
up.
blah 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 blah. Let's just say though, I'm a regular investment advisor here in America, and I got some clients that want to own some Bitcoin and some NFTs or whatever it is in there. What do they do? How do they contact you? Like, what do you do? Like, why? Just kind of, I give you a little chance to talk up your biz here for a minute?
Sure, thanks. So if you just take a look, this is our landing page. And so here's our target base that you want to think about. So if you're an individual investor and you have a small amount, this does not make sense for you. Who this makes sense for are high net worth individuals, family offices, pension funds, endowments, investment banks, anybody, insurance companies. So anybody that has any kind of sizable investment that wants to protect their cryptocurrency. So we're based out of Wyoming, and as I'm sure you all know, it has some of the most progressive digital asset laws in the country. And actually, starting back in 2019 and then 2021, they've revised the laws where they're actually saying that digital assets are intangible property. And this was big because it then allows it to be insured. So if you see here on the page, we actually have a Lloyd's of London insurance policy for $500 million. So in case you were to get hacked, fraud, theft, or something were to happen physically to the servers, you could now go to Lloyd's of London and, put in a claim to be able to retrieve your digital asset. All of our private keys and digital assets are stored offline in cold storage. So two-factor authentication, encryption, multi-signatory wallets, penetration testing on a regular basis, etc. So it's safe like this. And it's also a trust, which is big. So if you were to get a lawsuit, divorce, anything where they would want to go after your digital assets or private keys, That cannot happen in Wyoming. And there's also no income tax in Wyoming either. So it's really a place to safely store your digital assets and cryptocurrency, as you're talking about, Pat. Now, let's say you were on Binance, Coinbase, OKX, wherever you are, and you day trade like Jeremy was mentioned. So you can go and day trade, do your thing, and then bring your profits back and safely store it here on Crypto
Right.
Custody Trust. So what it does is it functions as a bank. The other thing is that we have staking on the conventional side that you're looking at here. So anywhere between 4 to 14% per year, and it can be with Ethereum all the way up to Avalanche and Polkadot, et cetera, to get your returns. Now, if you see that little button up there that says H.E.A.T,
Yep.
yeah, click that. This now goes over to our H.E.A.T compliance side, and this gets into all the stuff I was talking to you about on that. Now, you may
Right.
say, why do you have to click that? Because by doing this, this now eliminates all of the things that would not be considered H.E.A.T compliant.
Makes
So you
sense.
can go back and forth, and you can have a web
Right.
wallet on either the crypto custody side for H.E.A.T compliance over or on the traditional side, or you can be on both if you want to.
Got it. Okay. Got it. So we're done. I want to switch gears again to one of Matt's favorite topics, plastic surgery, as you can tell.
Does
So,
Hey,
Matt need plastic surgery?
this is
well, I
all
mean, no, look at that
natural,
tight
man.
forehead he's got. That's not natural, is it? I
This
mean, he
is
can't
all
be.
natural.
No, it's not.
It
That's
looks
not
like a little
natural.
Botox action to me.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
know.
know.
Me too, man.
No
Me too.
Botox has ever touched this skin.
I
Okay.
love it, Matt. I love it.
So, I mean, this is actually really interesting, plastic surgery, right? Because I put it into this stock screener I do we have this thing called the H.E.A.T formula, David, right? It's hedges, edges, asymmetric risk, and themes, right? And I made
Okay.
this chat GPT thing. I plugged this stuff in there, just spits it out. It's pretty dumb, but it brings up some interesting points, right? So, first of all, it said plastic surgery is not a hedge. It's cyclical and sentiment driven. Do you believe that?
100%. Really, what we are is a leading indicator for actually the stock market because it's disposable income by the patients. So it really tells. You know what? When the recession occurred in 2008 and 2009, I knew about it before it was even going to occur because I actually saw our amount of cosmetic surgery started to drop off precipitously. I'm seeing it
I got to
now.
put you on the payroll.
No, right?
Yeah, I'm actually
I
seeing
need to
it.
know this ahead of time.
This is a tip for you, Matt. We're seeing it again now.
All right.
And we're
Not a
actually,
surprise.
Repeat that
Yeah.
again, repeat what you just said again, because I
They're
was
seeing
like
it
off in
again
my own
now,
world.
which makes sense.
What are they
So-
seeing again?
A
so what's
slowdown.
happening?
Slow down.
Yes,
Got
I'll go slower and lay this out. There's actually been a study
Please.
that plastic surgeons did looking at plastic surgery as a leading indicator for the stock market.
Right.
And so what it shows is because it's consumer confidence, because you're not going to get a facelift if you think the market's going to crash.
Right.
So when we see the amount of cosmetic surgery volume start to tail off, that always usually leads to a downturn in the stock market. And it's held up, and I've seen it just in my time in practice. And right now, we're seeing this. Usually, if you look at March, April, May, June, and July, it's pre-beach time. So the ladies are just flocking in to get the breasts, the bellies, the
That's right.
liposuction, you name it. But the
Right.
normal volume that we're used to seeing has dropped, which I'm telling you is a leading indicator of consumer confidence, which is tanking, which we already know that, but we're seeing it boots on the ground. So I would tell
Right.
you, the red flags are going off, which I saw back in 2008 and 2009, and we're seeing it again now. So that's just a little tip.
No,
from
no,
plastic surgery to
this
hold.
is-
Wait, Pat. The big takeaway from this is David has room on his schedule.
No,
If
no,
he
I was
needs to
just,
get
I was
some
going to
work
ask for
done.
I was just about to ask for my
I
pre-summer.
mean, Pat, I'm looking at you. I think there's a couple things you may want to touch up, and
Dude,
I think
I
David
need
may have
some
some
work.
time.
I'm working on my. Okay. Does that mean I get my pre-summer bonus then? Because I could take it right. That you could just send it right to David for me.
Just send it right on over. Put on crypto custody trust.
All right.
There you go.
So next thing. Seriously, this is actually interesting stuff, by the way. So cosmetic procedures are identity driven, and people go into debt to preserve perceived attractiveness. This creates inelastic demand in good times. But you just kind of the opposite. But it's an interesting thought, though, right? People will do anything to stay beautiful, I guess. All right.
Can I
So
tell you a
then-
funny story? You want to hear a funny story?
Oh, please.
I'd
love
rather
this.
hear your funny story than
Than
what
mine.
Pat is saying. Yeah.
This is a good story. So remember this, because you guys will like this and you can use this with your friends. Okay. So in plastic surgery, we have what's called the look scale. And Pat and Matthew are probably old enough to remember Bo Derek. Do you remember Bo Derek was the
Yes.
perfect
Yeah.
10?
Yes. Yeah.
Jeremy,
Man.
you might be too young, Jeremy. Do you remember?
I remember hearing about it. Yep.
Okay, so she was the perfect 10.
Yeah, I've been,
Yeah.
I've been kind of like, people use that Bo Derek analogy when they talk about me all the time, by the
I
way.
know.
But
well,
I mean,
listen,
Pat
Pat-
lives in LA. I think he dated her, right, Pat?
He might have when she was in the nursing home. But this is a good one for you, Pat. to
I
keep
meant
in
I was a
mind going
10, man.
forward.
I meant
All right,
I'm the
Pat,
10.
let-
I'm the
let-
10.
Let David tell his
All right.
joke.
All
Pat,
right.
you're still a 10. So the thing of it is that the way the look scale works is it's anywhere from 1 to 10. So if you consider whoever you think is the most beautiful woman in the world, that's a 10. All right. So if you're a 10, you need not be in to see me as a plastic surgeon because you're already perfect. Now, if you're a 1, plastic surgery can move you up 2 on the scale, but only 2. So I never tell them where they are. So if you're an 8, you can be a 10.
Funniest shit I've ever
But
heard.
Pat, if you're a 1, the best you can be is a 3. So no matter where you are, Pat, and I'm not going to say where you are on the scale, but wherever you think you are, if you come with your bonus for Matthew, you can only move up 2.
All right, Pat, next, or Jeremy, you're the tech guy. We got to put a poll on here. I mean, I
Where's
vote Pat as a
on the scale
2.
of 1 to
We
10.
put a poll up, and then we
You know
also
what's funny? This is actually the real conversations I have with people. This is really the type of stuff I talk about all the time, by the way. Like, yeah, I'm a 2.
That's
She was a
not
6.
really normal.
we also need a
Not at
chart.
this age, that's for sure, bro. But it's true.
You know what? This is the problem in plastic surgery. You get the women that come in that are a 3 and they want to be a 10, and then they want to bitch at me all day about how come I don't look like a 10. And I'm like, you got your full 2. What do you want me to do?
There's
Oh,
a
this is
there's a
so
fun
funny, man. Yeah,
there's a fun
this is
TV
bad.
series my wife and I used to watch called Nip Tuck. You should see that
Yeah,
one.
I know
That's
that show.
hilarious.
I would
Seriously.
assume David is familiar with that.
All right,
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
forward. Secular themes. This is the T part. We'll skip the other ones. A is boring. All right, secular themes. Aging population, Instagram face culture, right? And Zoom dysmorphia. Like, what is
Yeah.
Zoom dysmorphia?
Wow.
Jesus
Yeah, so
Christ,
there-
what is
there-
that?
Yeah, so Pat, there's a thing called body dysmorphic syndrome. And what that means is that you have, very similar to you, a unrealistic view of your body. So
All right,
Pat, you a lot of
Pat,
fun,
I
man.
think
I
you've
really-
been
I really
replaced.
I
We're
really
gonna
appreciate
get
that. So-
David, and we're gonna get
His
rid of
jokes,
you.
dude, your jokes are better than mine. What's the deal?
Yeah, so-
That's why
Plastic
we're
surgeon
replacing you.
crypto guy, you know?
Yeah. So the thing of it is that body dysmorphic syndrome is where you have an unrealistic viewpoint of or view of your body. So Zoom dysmorphia would be from what you're seeing on Zoom or TikTok, that you're trying to reach these unrealistic
Oh,
expectations.
I know that feeling right now. I
Yeah,
have,
mean,
I
you're
actually
trying
have
to
Zoom
look as good as
dysmorphia
me and
right now.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Pat, is when you're on the scale and you're trying to get more than 2 is Zoom dysmorphia.
Right. Okay.
Trying to get 5 and you're
So-
really only a 3.
That's why Matt's like 2 glasses of wine in. Like I was a 2 before the wine. Now I'm a 4. You know what I mean?
And
This is ginger ale, man.
The more you drink,
beer
the better
goggles
Pat
don't work
looks.
that way.
All right.
The
Let me
money-
keep moving. As tech gets better and procedures get less invasive, adoption grows across age, gender, geography.
Wait, but let's bring it to stocks. Because again,
Yeah.
I'm not
No.
familiar with
I'm
any
almost done.
plastic surgery
Give me
stuff.
one more. Well, give me
He's-
one more minute.
He's almost there.
And then And then it talks about GLP side effect. Weight loss means more skin tightening, plastic surgery, not less, etc. So, all right, to stocks. So one is Airbnb, which is weird, which is I thought was interesting because of a surge of medical tourism, right? So you get your, your work done, you need an Airbnb. Any
Like
thoughts on
the
that,
chart.
David?
Yeah, the thing of it is that with medical tourism, it's kind of dangerous and you've got to be careful because the problem is that when you have the surgery done, what if you have complications and you've gone somewhere else? And I've had this happen. Where we see a lot of people going down to try to save money is to the Dominican Republic. Very, very
Right.
cheap down there.
Yeah.
They get the surgery done. The sterilization techniques are marginal at best. They get infected, and now what? Because with the litigious society that we're in now and with the litigation, if I now get involved, the onus is going to come back to me from a litigious perspective or a litigation perspective, although I didn't do the surgery, but now I'm involved. They can't sue the surgeon down in the Dominican Republic. So now it's going to come back on me. So as a patient going for medical tourism, you put yourself at tremendous risk and something goes bad because the U.S. surgeons, when you come home, are going to be very leery to go and get involved
After the
because now
fact.
the liability risk comes back on them.
Okay, AbbVie, ABBV, they make Botox.
Buy.
Buy?
That's
Yeah?
a buy.
Yeah.
Yes. And the reason why is goes back to what you said, all jokes aside. The thing of it is things are going more and more to less invasive. And the fact of it is that when you're looking at Botox, it lasts anywhere from about 4 months to 5 months max. And so it's a recurrent product that they have to come back and use, number one. Number two, they continue to age. So therefore, it's going to be always in vogue. And number three, it's a way that they're trying to go to stave off going to a facelift or eyelid surgery, etc. So that's always going to be in high demand. And as you said, with the Zoom dysmorphia, with TikTok and all these different things where you're seeing this culture of beauty, it's forcing them more and more to this realm. So this is a big buy.
Okay, how about Invisalign, Align, ALGN? I mean, that's not
With the
really,
teeth, yeah,
yeah,
it's
the
the same.
teeth.
Yeah, I get it. I think Invisalign is another good one as well because of the fact that you're now going to align the teeth without having to go to the old braces. And it's just the whole culture of trying to look better and younger. And as the population continues to age, they don't want to look old because they don't feel old. And so they're going to be doing all of these rejuvenation techniques to stay young.
Right. Okay, how about, this is the same theme though, and it can't just popped up on the screen, Estee Lauder, EL. I mean, that's not really plastic surgery, but it does
It's the
fit the
same.
theme.
It all fits into the same
Yeah.
theme, and I would say the serums, the oils, everything again to promote beauty, a youthful look. All of these things are just going to continue as these baby boomers start to look older, but don't feel old, and that's the key. I mean, you look at Pat. I'm sure Matthew, you feel the same way. We're all getting older, and I'm in the group, and I'm older than all of you guys. But the thing of it is you don't feel sick, you don't feel old, and you don't want to look that way, and you want to be able to keep up and compete with the younger people like Jeremy. So when you're
Right.
looking at this in totality, especially in the workforce, age is considered with out of date, out of touch. You're not up on technology, and no one wants to deal with the older people.
Right.
And when I get the men coming in that are getting these facelifts and rejuvenation procedures, the thing that they say on a repetitive basis is the reason I'm doing this is because I want to be able to keep up in the work place.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
So I got to
All
keep
right.
my youth as long as I can.
Well,
Got it.
You know, I have a
also,
couple-
John, I think you're my only employee with gray hair. So just
Yeah,
think
yeah,
about it.
yeah. Well, okay, so I mean, I had some other stuff here, but I think we're getting
Yeah,
to the
we're
end.
bumping up against the top of the hour
Well,
here.
yeah, but this has been awesome. Actually, this is hilarious. Hilarious. I needed a laugh, man.
Yeah,
Great
it was a
stuff,
lot of
David.
fun, gentlemen. I had a great time. Really enjoyed it.
And kudos, my daughter wants to be a Johns Hopkins student. She wants to get into cardio thoracic.
Oh,
Very
wow.
cool.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I wish her the best of luck.
Thank you. But it's cool
Okay,
to
so Anything in closing? Anyone else?
I think I'm
No,
good. I'm going to go dig into a couple stocks, but I'd love to be able to build a chart or an indicator based on the plastic surgery index. That'd be kind of neat because if the demand's falling off, it'd be neat to be able to put that into we could just build that into an indicator.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I got
check it
to
out.
dig more into tokenization because
Yeah.
I got to talk about it in a panel in 2 months.
There's some
So
cool
David,
stuff there.
yeah, if anything changes or there's some new developments or, just let me know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
we'll
will,
bring you
Pat.
back on.
Definitely will. Yeah, I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
enjoyed it. You guys have been great. I had so much fun.
Thank you,
Definitely.
sir. All right,
Yeah,
guys. See you later.
Great time. Thanks
All
again,
right,
guys.
Have a